we talked a little bit about some of the frustrations that we've experienced as practitioners, but before this podcast, I know Cordy suggested that we go away and think about the best analogy we could use to explain what is the problem that the reinsurance or industry has with data and how do they tackle it. Drawing upon all of that secret creativity that we keep somewhere on a shelf in our respective homes. So I was curious to hear, Jerad, having had all of the half hour before this podcast to think of a creative analogy. What have you come up with to try and explain to enthusiasts of reinsurance and beyond?
The center of this problem.
The center of this problem. Yeah. How do we tell people what this data problem is like? You can use an analogy or you can use a metaphor if you want to go really.
Do you have one? Do you have one to hand?
I've got one. Yeah, I thought about it on the train on the way here. Do you want me to go first?
You go first. You go first. And I will
Jerad
calibrate.
Hasn't done his homework. I'm kidding. Okay, well, my analogy, getting brownie points with Cordy here. He's like, see, Ben's done his work. My analogy for how this reinsurance podcast, I was thinking about it, especially when I wore this slightly too big for me jacket today, because Nowhere offers a size 34 suit anyway, different problem for another time.
Sponsored by TM Lewin.
My analogy was actually around seats, which was, in reinsurance, you have all of these very, very skilled underwriters who are kind of like tailors. We talked in the previous episode about why we love reinsurance. We love how bespoke and custom everything is. And so you have these brokers and these underwriters who are really skilled at designing custom bespoke suits, for their clients. But then when it comes to sizing the customer, in this case, the reinsurance buyers, they are unable to let the brokers and reinsurers measure them. They're like, you can have a photo of me from quite far away. Which is
partly obscured by another person.
with another person standing in front of you, and it's foggy. And so okay, well, I think I can make you a kind of suit that vaguely fits and give you a rough price for that. It's like, well, I can give you the data for my left arm. I can tell you how long my left arm is. In feet, and my right arm in meters, because they're in different systems, you see. So I can't use a consistent way of expressing how big my body is in different areas using normal or consistent information. And so you end up with this really weird suit being created, just guessing, what the client might be like, and with the gap emerging of the customer, the broker, and the underwriter all not really being sure whether what they've created is the best fit, and hoping that it's going to look good on them when they wear this suit for the rest of the year, and they're not going to get angry complaints of afterwards, etc., or that they've designed this suit in such a way to protect everyone involved. It's now a protective suit. That was my analogy. Ta-da! That was my amusing analogy, is that basically, at the moment, it's impossible to take the measurement of a student because the data that they're able to provide is quite inconsistent and quite vague, which we don't blame the student for, by the way. That we'll come into a bit more detail as to why it's so hard for them to provide their measurements. But
the analogy that I thought of, which I assumed wouldn't be as good as yours, but hopefully it's more entertaining.
So you're disappointed with mine?
No, yours. I said yours is going to be better than mine anyway. But
you now feel happy to present your analogy, having heard that mine is not as intimidating as you at first thought. Or you were waiting for me to go first so that you'd be able to find all the ways that yours is better.
Mine had more of an innovation lens on it.
Okay.
And so a couple of years ago when B3I was kicking off, which is a blockchain effort the industry's put together, there was this conversation that we were having around, we build sort of these, and they kept using industrial shipping, where the introduction of the shipping container actually transformed how we could ship goods internationally, because you could standardize to some degree what was there. But what the industry actually is more like, I don't know if you've seen like Storage Wars, these sort of this is more what
for a long time.
The industry is like. It's like we have this conformed sort of storage space unit, And you're like, amazing. We should be able to really understand. They're all the same. They're all really consistent. But when you sort of open up the door, it's like complete carnage about what's inside. And as you said, I think your analogy pointed out really nicely, is we don't actually let you go in. You have to, from the outside, kind of poke your head around a little bit and see kind of what do you think is in there. And you can definitely see that one thing, which is pretty good. But that drape is covering something which looks like a bomb we don't want to have. But you can't confirm or deny that thing is there. And then you're sort of left kind of trying to price this out, which, again, I think in our industry, we talked a bit on the last one, I'm sure we'll talk about constantly, is the importance of these relationships, where if you then run it down to let's auction these things off, if that's a disastrous policy, you don't want to get it at a really low price because you don't have clarity what's in there. But if I know it's your shipping container and you're like, well, I can't let you in, but this is what's underneath that because I put it there. And we trust each other, it gives me a lot more confidence in understanding what is there. But I think you pointed out a lot, this sort of, we want you to have the data, but we don't really do a lot to make sure you have it. And there's this underlying challenge that those players might have.
If I was wearing a hat, I would take it off. Maybe I will wear a hat for another episode. But I also
cheated. I had more time to think through mine after Cordy chastised me off air.
No, that is a really, really good analogy. Oh, but Cordy's photo. I was about to say, Jerad, I was going to hand it to you, but no, Cordy's holding up a sign to say that he thinks Ben's analogy is better. So I'll take it, but maybe it's because not everyone's seen Storage Wars.
Yeah, and because you have a prop you wore in your jacket.
This is true. I am wearing a jacket. Jerad didn't bring a Storage Wars DVD to this.